Welcome to the Wise Practice Podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to Rebeca Gilbert. She's an LPC and somatic trauma therapist serving women in both Florida and Georgia, specializes in EMDR, brain spotting, and body-based trauma care. She's a Faith Center private practice owner who helps clients and clinicians move out of survival mode by honoring nervous system regulation, ethical care, and sustainable rhythms of work and rest. Rebeca bridges neuroscience, somatic wisdom, and Christian faith to challenge hustle driven models of success in therapy and business. Her work invites clinicians to build practices rooted in safety, stewardship, and trust rather than fear and burnout. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, even reading your bio, I was like, I need to talk to that girl.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad it's resonating.
Definitely. Well, let's just start out getting to know you a little bit.
Sure.
Tell us kind of where you're located, your
Yeah,
family, anything personal that you want to share, just so we get
sure.
to Rebecca.
Absolutely. So I'm based out of Orlando, Florida. Orlando's not my home, but that's a long story. We can chat about that at the conference or another day.
Yeah.
But I'm based out of Orlando. I've been married for 15 years and I have a daughter and a son. My son is 11 and my daughter is 9. So we're in the throes of middle school.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, let's kind of talk about, well, I guess first I want to know more of how you got into the field that you're in. I mean, not every
yeah,
therapist does this type of work. So share
sure.
a little bit more about that with us.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've known that I wanted to be a helper for a long time. I actually interned at a crisis pregnancy center in college and really had a clear sense of calling from that place of like, okay, this is what God's calling for my life, more a calling than a career. So from about 18, I knew this was a calling. So I went straight from college to seminary for a counseling degree.
Oh, where'd you go
Yeah.
to school?
I went to Covenant Seminary in St. Louis.
Yeah,
I
cool.
really wanted a place that would give me a clinical training with a really solid scriptural biblical foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I was in the more psychodynamic and person centered and all the fun things until rubber met the road. And so in 2019, actually 2017, I found somatic attachment EMDR. And so and attachment focused EMDR. And that was amazing. And as I was wrapping up my 10-month certification on that, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. I know, right? Big exhale. He's okay now. That's a big miracle story. We can go into that if you want. But I was already started to be curious. I had been practicing for about 10 years at that point, and I had started to notice how just talk therapy wasn't helping my clients get the healing they wanted. And it was getting close and they were growing, but they weren't having the root and the breakthroughs that really were desired. So that was what led me to EMDR. And then my husband's cancer was in hindsight, was an invitation to walk it out. Don't you love God does that? He's like, hey, here's a tool. Now walk it out. And so his cancer was really quick and really fast. He was all of a sudden, he was a stay-at-home dad. We had a 3 and a 5-year-old. And I had a solo practice, my first like brick and mortar, like my name on the wall. Like it was my dream practice. And then all of a sudden he's out and the doctors gave him 6 months to live. And here I am. I'm a solo practice owner. Love my job. Like this is like dream setup. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, 5-year-old starting kindergarten. And then the doctors are like, hey, you might become a widow soon, and it's not looking good. And that's when I started actually having to lean into both my faith and my EMDR work to just survive.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of what got me more into more of the somatic piece of therapy was because I needed it, is the short story.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Our stories lead us to the work we do. I think about the Bible verse about we comfort those with the comfort we've been given.
Yes. Yeah.
God has a way of doing that.
Mhm.
So, how long had you had your private practice before the diagnosis?
I've done a bunch of different work and like, community mental health, small group, nonprofits, but I had started solo practice when I came back from my first maternity leave. I realized after in the group, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to rebuild. I might as well build my own.
Sure. Mm,
And so I had been in solo practice for 5 years at that point.
yeah. Gosh. I mean, having your own business, young children, diagnosis for your spouse, that's
Mhm.
certainly heaviness.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And we're really grateful. Our church really, we were living away. We were in Athens, Georgia, at the time. Yeah. Well, we've done this SEC college tour. We lived in Oxford, Mississippi at Ole Miss for a season and then moved to Athens, Georgia. Never affiliated with the universities, just working around college towns. And I love college towns. I loved working with the college students. That was a big part of my population and my practice. So our church was amazing and really supportive, but we were away from family. His was in Alabama, mine in Florida. And so it was just like, what does it look like to, at first it was survive, right? How do you just survive the season? But it's been really interesting unpacking cancer. So it's been, we're getting to year 7 now. This summer will be year 7. And really, because this was all 2019, love, of course, we had little kids, cancer, and then COVID.
Yeah. Oh, man.
The COVID was a whole interesting situation for us. But it's been really interesting to distill the lessons from that now that like the survival was first, and then to go, okay, after surviving and how do we stabilize? And I feel like now I'm in the season of like, how do I reorient my life with the lessons that I gained from that season? How do
Mm.
I allow that suffering to shape me and shape my work and keep me tender and not hardened? How do I let that season soften me, but also reorient and reevaluate what my goals are for personal life and business too? So it's really reshaped how I think of my private practice, how I measure success, and how I want things to go moving forward after that time.
You brought up this idea of suffering. That's so biblical, unfortunately, that it's
Yes,
through our suffering that we
yes,
understand love, we
yes,
appreciate, we grow,
hmm,
and we serve.
yes.
So yeah, so let's talk about, I mean, I'm curious, how do we stay sustainable? Because even though you're talking specifically about your husband's diagnosis, we
Sure.
could move that to so many other traumatic
Absolutely. Right.
situations,
Yes.
practice
Yes.
owners. So how do we continue in our practice, or should we continue? Should we
Yeah.
stop? And like, how can you just help us navigate that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, I can't prescribe to people's situation, but I can definitely describe mine. And whether it's a maternity leave, chronic illness, another cancer diagnosis, loss in the family, or whatever the suffering might look like, we can take the lessons from suffering. So for me, Whitney, it looked like that initial, just like get to a place that I tried. I really tried. So I'm a solo practice owner. So I don't have staff or anybody else. It was just me. So for 4 months, I tried to keep the boat afloat.
Hmm.
And that's when the panic attacks started. That's when I really started like I was at peace, but my body was just collapsing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, this direction is not sustainable. And so I actually sent my clients a notification in December 2019 saying, hey, it's just I'm going to need to take a sabbatical. And so I took 6 months off. I joked that the world joined me with COVID, but I had already planned on taking a sabbatical before everything shut down.
Wow. That's
Uh,
funny.
yeah, and so I just kind of I realized that I had gotten to the point that I was just trying to make a living. And then not that there's anything wrong with that, but our jobs are so layered that it's not just a paycheck, you know?
No.
And so, yes, I needed a paycheck, and it was the only income coming to the family. But I felt like God had been so faithful in allowing me to not harm my clients during that season. And I've seen some really sweet work, but it felt like it was starting to get to a point that it was unwise and risky, like from a risk management and just care,
Oh,
ethical practice. Like I felt like I was starting to be at a place that I couldn't provide quality, ethical care.
you're bringing up such a good topic here.
Mm,
I'm like sitting with it because that fine line
mhm,
between caring, like I think about when I'm raw or have
Mm,
something in my
yes.
life going on,
Yeah.
my goodness, I
Yeah.
actually think it makes me a better therapist,
Yes.
right? Because I'm in tune
Agreed.
with their pain. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
moving forward fast. But what you're saying, it's like, where do we find that line between I'm using it effectively and then what you're saying,
Yes.
like risky? How do you know that place?
Ah, that's such a good question. For me, what it looked like is that the first 3 months, it just felt like manna. It just felt like God was saying, here's your bread for today, here's your meat for today. And people, my clients kept showing up and it was sweet and I was able to sit with them and mourn with those who mourn. I was like, we were in it and it was a really tender place. And I felt like God really met us there. But then it started to shift to when my panic attacks started really taking off and my body was really struggling. And it shifted from a place of dependence to a place of depletion.
Hmm.
And it just it became that if I were to show up for my clients, um, I would have like panic attacks, migraines, and just be on the couch the rest of the day.
Yeah. That's certainly such a hard thing for us as therapists,
Mhm.
right?
It
Is that
is.
line. And then as a group owner, it's like my therapists come to me sharing about their
Mhm.
own suffering pain.
Mhm.
And then I'm thinking about how do I support them, but how do I put
Yeah.
seeing clients? Because you can't just be like, well, something sad happened in my life today. I can't go to work.
Of
Like,
course not. Right.
right.
No.
But at the
No.
same time, we do have to find that place of what you're saying.
Mhm.
Then as a business owner, and you're
Mhm.
kind of saying
Yeah.
this, that's revenue to help pay rent. And what am I going to do? It's
Yes.
so hard.
It is really hard. And so I think part of my framework for that now is seasonal, right? So if it's a short-term thing, if it's something that it's going to be 2 weeks of sadness, 1 month of sadness, it's just going to a loss of something, grief that is like more acute, but then you can subside. Then I just let it roll. But this one was the chronic was really building. We were getting to month 5 and there was no relief coming. I think a big marker for me, Whitney, is that if it had been more of a short, like a earmarked season, sometimes our suffering is has clear timelines to it. And I don't mean our grief. I mean, like, there's a medical procedure, there's an event, there's a treatment, there's a thing. And we know, okay, if I can get through this, then I'll be okay. Mine didn't have a timeline.
Hmm.
And so that was part of my decision process was really accepting that I don't have a timeline. I don't know if he's going to get better. And if he doesn't get better, we're looking at like quick decline. And so I had to really make a decision based on right now, the way I am, the way the trajectory is going. I had to be really honest with myself. And that kind of that internal discernment and that external accountability. That's where I brought friends. That's why I brought my wise counsel. My some good friends. My best friend is a therapist from grad school times and my family to come alongside me and say, "Hey, I'm concerned. We need income and I can't imagine this being wise and sustainable and responsible to keep doing for much longer. What do
Yeah.
you think?" And every single person said, "It's time to close your practice."
Now, did you close the practice or you took time off?
So it was kind of a hybrid.
Okay.
I took a sabbatical, a 6 month sabbatical, but we moved states during that time.
Okay.
So we moved from Georgia to Florida. And so I subleased my space. I sold all my furniture. I lost the physical space. And I transferred my clients to new people. And I told them, hey, I'm hoping to come back, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that was the honest thing I could tell them.
Sure.
And so that iteration of my practice close, the LLC never did.
Yeah.
But that version of my practice did not resume. I eventually, after things stabilized a little bit, I didn't have the capacity to be a solo practice owner for a season. So I joined a group in Georgia that I really respect. And I worked under them for 2 to 3 years while getting my Florida license because yay, licensure. They had me go back to grad school.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
had some of my therapists have to do that in the practice too. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate. Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
I so I stayed with the group practice in Georgia while kind of rebuilding physically, emotionally, spiritually, and just kind of getting my ducks in a row for Florida.
Yeah.
And then eventually I tapered down the Georgia group, started revamping my Florida practice, and
That's
I've
great.
been back to solo on my, for the last 2 years.
Great.
Yeah,
So this is more a logistical question, but I'm going to
sure.
guess people are thinking about it.
Yeah,
How did y'all survive financially without
yeah.
either of you working?
That's a really good question, and it's actually changed how I do my finances now.
Huh.
So this might be a problem for many practice owners, but we didn't have health insurance, traditional health insurance, because when you're solo, when you're self-employed, health insurance is difficult. So
Uh-huh.
we did medical sharing, Christian medical sharing, and that had been great for us through pregnancies and all the things, but they have a financial cap. So uh, we we cashed in all our retirement is the short answer, Whitney. We had to pull. Thankfully, we had no debt other than student loans and our mortgage before cancer, and so we had to cash in all our retirement and all our savings to stay afloat. And then with the medical bills were separate. We had about $1.5 million in debt um, from that. And I don't know if you want me to tell you a couple miracle stories sprinkled into here, but there was I could just leave it as a cliffhanger and people can find me at the conference if they want to hear the whole story. Or up to
Right.
you. I can tell you more. But basically, miraculous provision, we got approved for the medical debt to be forgiven. So I literally have a letter that hangs in my office that say you owe $0.
Wow. It's beautiful.
I was on the way to file for bankruptcy, and that
Mm.
letter came in. Yeah.
Wow.
You should have seen me. I was a mess. I was at the Chick-fil-A
Sure you
drive-through
were.
because we people gave us so many Chick-fil-A gift cards. I'm so grateful. I was at the Chick-fil-A drive-through
Oh, Chick-fil-A.
and I get the letter and then my email and I'm just weeping. And the sweet little 16-year-old was like, what can I forget what their little script is, but they basically asked for my order and I'm just bawling and I'm just like, these are happy tears.
Oh, wow.
And that poor girl was like, I'll just take a tray of chicken nuggets. And she's like, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm gonna be fine. But the short story is we cashed in 401k retirement. Our medical debt was forgiven. And then my husband's family made a GoFundMe. And that helped. That covered because he was in the hospital for 28 days and then he had to go to rehab before he could come home. And so the GoFundMe paid for the rehab. And so it took a village and all our retirement.
Yeah. We trust that God will build it right back, whatever it needs to be, right?
We're working on that, and that's part of the goals of my practice now. So since this was 7 years ago, one of my goals in rebuilding my practice was making sure my practice with my accountant's blessing I have a 401k set up through my practice and matching funds and things like that to rebuild rather aggressively. And then I also have a 6-month emergency fund in my practice.
Great. Right.
And so that if health changes or if a season, whatever, and that's just built in now that I can run, I have 6 months of salary in there
Good.
as a safety net. That was a
Great.
big lesson from from that suffering. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. So how's your husband doing now?
He is currently cancer free.
Mm. That's
Uh,
great.
the doctors have no explanation of why he's alive.
Mm.
Zero. There's no medical record. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
praise God for that.
I know. And they're like, it might come back. We don't know. I'm like, hey, you told us he only had 6 months. So we respect you, but we're not putting our trust in you.
That's yeah, yeah.
So
Well, as I'm sitting with your story and thinking about sustainable practices in the
yes.
midst of going through these things, is there anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to make sure to mention of kind of how to sustain during those times?
Yeah. So a couple things that have been really helpful for me, Whitney, is thinking about a sustainable practice is really reevaluating what sustainability is for each season. Just really
Mhm.
giving myself permission for that to be a seasonal reevaluation. And not necessarily a calendar year seasonal, but like it was different when I was pregnant to different when I had toddlers. Now both
Yes.
kids are in school, that's a different season. Cancer, I just think of cancer as a season. Um, and so really kind of giving myself permission to reevaluate what that looks like for each season. Um, I don't do weekends and night times anymore. That's no longer sustainable for me because I have to find time to be a mom, a person, and a spouse and a therapist, all the things. So some of it is as simple as boundaries with my time, boundaries with my expectations, and very honestly, boundaries with my income. I've become I used to have dreams of like, oh, I'm gonna own like have this like make this man this numbers and hit these metrics and these things of success. But honestly, reevaluating success has been like for me now, success is we can rebuild our retirement. I can take care of my family and I can work the least hours possible. That's success for me now.
Yeah. Well, I think you're speaking again to something that many practice owners that I hear is
Hmm.
they start working, as a consultant. It's like, well, what
Yeah.
are your goals? What do you want? And it's, I want this number. I want that
Yeah.
thing. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, but life doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
And
Mm-mm.
just hearing you talk about time, actually time's something I've been like contemplating the past month or two.
Yeah.
Different types of time,
Of course. Yeah.
Kairos time and you know,
Chronos time.
that's right.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
fulfillment and like being in something instead of like, I think so many business owners where point A to point B, give me the plan, I want to get there. It's like, I mean, I can give you the plan, but if it's not the season that you're in and you're not paying attention to that within you and within your practice, who cares what the plan is?
Right. I am not great with citations, but this one I know. Proverbs 16:1 comes to mind, which is the heart of a man can make plans, but the answers come from the lips of the Lord. I mean, this is not the practice journey I had in mind.
No, that's
Uh,
good.
and I didn't actually ever plan on living in Orlando, and that's not what I had in mind. And really being willing to shift and soften and pivot, and I think sustainability is a lot about adaptability
Yeah.
and discerning how to adapt for the season that you're in and not the season that you want, because there's a big difference.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious, and I
Hmm.
didn't tell you I was going to ask about this.
That's all right.
You recently started working with Laura Long,
Hmm.
doing some consulting, and I believe it's surrounding. In fact, I read your application about just kind of wanting to create something else that's sustainable outside your
Yeah.
practice. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, so we haven't met yet. I've worked with Laura in the past. We're starting on Monday. So today, as we record, it's Friday. We start
Uh-huh.
on Monday. But one of the things that I took, I've gotten into a practice in the last couple years of taking a week a year for me. I travel by myself,
Yes.
just me, and I do it Monday through Friday. So like while my kids are in school, so it's less work for my husband. So I took a solo cruise this year in January, and it's
Uh-huh.
my like rest and recharge, and it's like a spiritual retreat of sorts for myself. And I really feel like God calling me to a season of more intentional slowing down and
Mm-hmm.
cultivating more rest and being even more intentional with slowing down in my time. And so I'm like, okay, how can I decouple my income from therapy?
Yep.
And really trying to think of therapy as what if the dream now is what if therapy could be my true, will just really just be back to my calling and not have dollars attached to it? What if I didn't need the therapy income? What if there was something else that could carry the bulk of the income load?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I'm dreaming about now. I'm not exactly sure what it looks like. I don't want to have to do something that requires me to show up on, like, I don't want to run a Facebook group. Nothing wrong with those. But that's just not my thing. I don't want to run a group. I don't want to have to keep posting and pouring out. I don't want to hustle more, but it's just that longing for this curiosity around what could it look like to have a kind of don't want to call it passive because that, obviously implies that you're not working at it, but this income that doesn't require synchronous time.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, you certainly reached out to the right girl for that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, I am gonna definitely have to catch up with you in 6 months,
Yeah.
maybe at the summit. I definitely want to hear kind of what God builds through this and your passion, and
Okay.
it's a beautiful thing. So,
I'm
is
excited to
there
hear.
anything we
Yeah.
didn't touch on that you wanted to make sure to mention before we finish up here?
No, I think my goal, Whitney, was just really encourage people to that like being faithful sometimes doesn't mean getting bigger.
Hmm.
And that being sustainable in practice isn't just necessarily going from being a supervisee to having your full license to having a solo to then building a group and then having multi-site group. That is a lovely journey, but not everybody is called to it. And to just really invite people to like reevaluate what their success metric is so that they can find what's sustainable and what God's calling them and not what other people are doing.
I love that. Well, Rebecca, it's been my honor to spend this time with you, and looking forward to seeing where the journey goes. And thank you for sharing with us today.
Such a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.